did that lap 40 stop. In fact, come to think of it, oh no, but he's been in again, of course, more recently.
Okay, now I think they'll just cruise at this stage. There's no reason for many of them to come in. That quick scar. Oh, having said that, here we go.
2 hours and 13 minutes of racing. 90.
Checking the pads. That's very
8 laps they're on at the moment, and car number 35 that's in third place.
Having a good look at the pads, because that's the one thing that worries them, is pad wear on that particular car.
And it's the reason too that Freddie Gibson's kept his Mark Scaife, Jim Richards car away from here this weekend, that he's going for very thick pads, a very big caliper on the Winfield Commodore, because he feels pad wear could be a problem at Bathurst. Others say they'll never get it under the guards and the wheel won't fit within the Holden mudguard that doesn't have the same flare on the outside of it, Howard Marsden, as does the Ford guard. But perhaps it's time, while they're on this pace car lap, the fourth pace car period, we've had a 4, a 3 and a 2, 9 laps so far, now a fourth one. Perhaps it's time to talk about the aggravation among Ford and Holden, the two manufacturers behind the leading contenders in touring car racing at the moment. And Ford very upset. They put out a very long statement, or Glenn Seaton's team did, on Seaton's behalf the other day, saying that they'd been wronged and so on. And Ford, under Peter Gillitzer, their motorsport liaison man, who tells me that he was speaking on behalf of the company's managing director, John Ogden, says if we don't get better treatment, we might get out of the sport after this 1-year comeback after a 20-year absence. And they're upset because they say the regulations have gone against them. Their car's uncompetitive. Ask that of Glenn Seaton at the moment. And things should have changed. What's your opinion, Howard Marsden?
Yeah, I think that it's a shame that people are actually talking about this right at the moment. To be talking about changing the regulations before we've come here to race at Sandown and before we go to the big race of the year at Bathurst, to me seems not sensible. General Motors, Ford and Cam should have decided some 3 weeks ago, look gentlemen, let's leave it until after Bathurst, let's just see what comes off those 2 races, then we'll have a full year's information. We'll know about the
different
cars,
types of tracks,
and different tracks under different conditions,
different lengths of race.
Exactly right. And then we'll know over the whole year who's got the advantage and whether we need to do anything about it. Then they should really have put everybody into a big room, locked the door, and not let anybody out until they made a decision. To be talking about it at the moment is incorrect. So I think the final decision, that is that no changes are going to be made at this stage, I think is quite correct. And certainly this race here at Sandown is again giving us an indication that the true speed differentials between the Falcon and the Commodore is not very much at all. The better team right at the moment on the day is pulling this job off. You'll get a similar situation come up at Bathurst. One of the teams again will look better than the others, but in actual speed potential between the cars is hardly anything in it right at this stage.
It's been an unholy punch-up, and one that I've found a bit tedious and boring. I mean, if you went into the details of it, you couldn't put it in a 60-minute current affairs program. But we'll try and have a talk to Glenn Seaton, leading the race, resting at the moment in car number 30, as we look in the pits at car 44. That's the track car that's in 10th place that he shares with Peter Jansen, and Howard Marsden trying to catch up with Glenn Seaton in car number 30. They're racing again. So Glenn likes to concentrate. He doesn't feel too free to chat, but he did hear us there. We'll catch up with him later, and he just bounds off a curb there as they resume racing. Clear track conditions, several cars recovered. Thomas Mazira in car 16 behind, and 100 laps completed now in a race that's been running just over 2¼ hours. The Sandown 500. An enthralling race in front of a very big and enthusiastic crowd, and a crowd that in the big grandstand here gets the most superb view of the racing. In fact, I think it's got to be the best general viewing area at a motor race track anywhere in Australia.
And so convenient to the whole metropolitan area of Melbourne. I think it's a grand place for having a good race here today. It's good to see a good crowd, and the racers are doing their part of the job.
Not far from here, in fact, there'd be a big crowd over at VFL Park. And yesterday, Melbourne people feeling a little bit relaxed. Is that right?
Yeah, they're certainly
MCG.
At the MCG.
Okay.
A different sport on the same day.
I'm not a native, I don't know where they're playing, but I know that the Mighty Blues won yesterday and South Australia's no longer in it. So there were some smiling faces around quite a few restaurant and shopping areas last night. The Mighty Blues means Carlton, is that right? Yes. So there we are, and we're up here this high and safe because of K&R Services. And aren't those marvellous bits of hydraulics that just sort of say, well, I'd like to go up there, no matter how much the wind blows. Look at it. Ooh. I say no matter how much the wind blows, but I'm not a good man with heights. But our cameraman is. And Glenn Seaton's a good one with speed on the ground.
They're really getting bounced through that left-hander there, aren't they?
So, yes, Glenn Seaton victorious in this race. 2 previous occasions and looking very much, and unless something untoward happens, as though he'll do it on this 3rd occasion. So 86 and 90, a 4-year gap between the 1st and the 2nd victory. Will it be a 3-year gap to the 3rd? It's Thomas Mazira in car 16 and now in 5th place. And look at the wind over his overalls.
But then Thomas has done some open wheeler stuff, so he'll be used to a bit of wind, but not as much as he's getting at the moment.
Indeed, and a big blow up for car number 11 across the start finish line. 2nd place is out of the race. So the car that won it last year, Greg Hansford piloting the car, and unfortunately, and for one of the privateer, small budget, sort of well-organised local heroes, Larry Perkins, who did so well in the car early in the race, the car that led the race for a few laps.
All the smoke coming from the centre of the...
Lap 30 to 34 and then on to 44. So led for 15 laps, lap 30 to 44. And when placed in 2nd position, 1 lap down to the race leader, has gone out with a big engine blow-up. And ironically, from an engineer that builds his own race engines. Let's hear from him down in the pits.
Disappointment for Larry Perkins. Larry, any indication what happened?
Greg said on the radio just before the smoke that he'd lost a cylinder, and now we got some smoke. I would say it's probably dropped a valve or something.
Larry, you put a great effort together last year. You were almost on pole this year. What's the feeling at the moment?
Well, you know, obviously it's disappointment, but we're going to capitalise on what we've learnt today, and obviously we can't have a repeat in 3 weeks' time up at Bathurst.
Were you trying anything different today that caused the engine to go this way?
No, not in the department that would have caused that. All we were trying today and throughout this weekend, we were trying real hard, but that wouldn't have been the reason it's failed. It's something that obviously we don't know yet, but it's not a result of trying hard. Something's failed for some other reason.
Very badly.
Thank you.
Great soldier, Larry Perkins. A lot of time for him. A guy who, when I arrived in England in '76 to see my first and taste and smell and hear Formula One for the first time, he was driving a Formula One BRM. It was barely a Formula One car. It was a fair horror. But he's been a lot of places, and one of 11 Australians who've driven in Grand Prix racing. Great engineer, great race driver, great character, and does this exercise with a maximum 8 guys. In his early days at Bathurst in a few weeks' time, he'll have only 3 because he'll have the other guys back in the workshop making money for him. Yeah. Private pilot too, sorry.
No trouble at all. And talking of private cars, here's the Bob Jones car. Been around for a period of time as Bob, and does a good soldering job. He's running now, where are we, in position 6. That's excellent from that viewpoint. And he's down, we can't quite see the number of laps. We're down right at the moment, but he's down about 5 laps.
And he's in fact come up to 5th because of the retirement there of car number 11. It's still being shown in 4th place, so even with it stopped where Greg Hansford brought it to a halt, it's got enough of a lead over Mazira in 16 for it still not to be up into 4th place. For Jones in 12, still not to be up into 5th place. as he will be shortly. But again, there's lots of news from the pits and Ian Campbell.
Thanks, Will. There's been a lot of penalties handed out under the last yellow flag. First of all, the first one to get the wrath of the judges was Stephen Harrington in the 5 car. He got a stop and go for passing, allegedly under the yellow. And the second one's just been and gone, the Daily Planet entry with Rowan Cook behind the wheel. So the judges are right on it today.
Car 55 comes in now behind the 2 Glenn Seaton Peter Jackson team cars, lying 1 and 2, and still with this front splitter on 55. Broken as we could see it as on the GIO car. However, this is hanging together.
It is so far, but then the other one also stayed for a period of time before a piece finally did get into the oil system. So they're really quite awkward to get off and get in. He's in a good position. It's a very hard call as to whether to get him in and change him or take your chances and stay out. Of course, again, it's affecting the aerodynamic effect of that particular car at the front. Make it a bit harder to drive, but the driver will know all about it, and they're making their decisions on the time.
Third place at the moment for car 55. So Seaton and Jones in 30 have completed 105. Brabham Parsons in 35 have completed 104. Dunstan Harrington 103. Mazira, 4th place on 102 completed. So the field's certainly splitting up, but as we said, plenty would happen in the latter part of the race and when other drivers got into the cars. And I still feel there's an opportunity for that sort of thing to happen. Mazira will still play a part in this race and have an effect on it, and I'm sure, along with Brad Jones and others in car number 16. And I'm looking for the same sort of performance from Peter Brock, Charlie O'Brien in car 05, down in 9th place at the moment. But some people who, on pace of the drivers and of the cars, they can easily round up. They have a lot of rounding up to do, but I know they won't give up too easily.
And I tell you who's travelling very quickly at the moment is the Johnson Bow car, which is doing 1 minute 15.8, and if it's young Cameron McConville still in the car, then he's really going well.
So this is the situation at Sandown. 105 laps completed in the 161 lap Sandown 500, live to you from Melbourne on SBS.
Good afternoon, Alan Gaskell with another.
Obviously, you like to stay out there as Glenn Seaton comes to the pits here in the Peter Jackson lead car.
Aren't they doing a good job? 1-2 now at the moment in cars that qualified 3rd and 8th fastest. Just hold here for a moment as we see Thomas Mazira, I think, also preparing for a stop.
It's a very leisurely stop, isn't it?
They're not ultra urgent in that team. They've got good control of this situation.
All they really need to do now, Will, is just execute the job gently and sensibly. That's they've basically got it in their corner, and this is a nice controlled, sensible pit stop. Alan getting in the car.
Careful, sensible. Did they look like careful, sensible eyes to you?
Still a urgency in AJ's face, wasn't there?
It sure was. But Neil really felt for you early on as we with car number 30 now, which retains its lead as it goes out after that second pit. We said it would be due in at about 112, perhaps a little bit later on the basis of the pace car laps. Well, in fact, that was when he came in. But yeah, what was starting as a promising day, you led on lap 5 and into lap 6, started to go bad, and boy, didn't it turn to muck.
I partly contributed to my own downfall there, Will. The first time I allowed a situation where Alan could poke his nose up the inside, and Alan came up afterwards and we just had a laugh about it. It was no big deal. Fired off and got back on again. There's the man in question, and got back up through the field again. And I'd actually told myself a couple of times when the car got to about where Alan is at the moment, just be a little bit careful, because it was very shiny down there. It was slipperier there than it had been in any other part of the course. And a couple of laps prior, I'd put another couple of turns of rear brake bias on the car just to make sure I didn't lock a front when I was getting into some of these other higher speed turns and just understeer off. And you guys would have seen better than me what happened. I just locked up the rears and fired off. So that was just a silly mistake, sort of a C-grader's error.
Neil, you had a super run today. I mean, you really were very quick. What's the secret combination or anything special that you've managed to put together this day?
I think a lot of the credit, Howard, goes to Wally Story, our chief engineer. He's put a lot of time and effort into the car. We've got a car that absolutely meets the minimum weight requirement. Our car, in actual fact, requires fluids to get it over the minimum weight. We had to really ballast up yesterday before we could get it over the scales. And it's got good horsepower. The car's been well prepared. We've done a little bit of testing. We've basically used the whole Touring Car Championship with the old car to prepare data for this car. How we've got a System 4 PI system in the car, so we know we've got good data on the car.
Good.
Charlie O'Brien comes in, so we've got a good package.
And if I can say, well driven as well.
Thank you. Well, not that well, Howard.
7th place at the moment, Peter Brock's car. Charlie O'Brien, car 5. So
I see Peter had some problems early on with oil mist. I didn't really catch up with the problem, but
leaky oil cooler. Just a film coming from it.
The filter body cracked. Right. Filter body.
When I caught Peter up after my first demise, if I can say it that way.
You've had a few today.
Yeah, I've had a few. Managed to swing and miss a couple of times, and Peter was very gracious and allowed a little bit of room down in this part of the track, and I could see that he was in a bit of strife.
We'll come back shortly and talk more with Neil Crompton, the GIO car number 7, rated 20th in the field at the moment, but retired from the race. But let's hear from the man who's made all this happen and taken enormous courage down there with Kyle Patterson.
Thanks, Will, and the promoter of the Sandown 500, John Davis, and you must be happy with the amount of drama out there for your paying customers.
Well, what more can you do? I mean, the television coverage is fantastic, Kyle. The reproduction, the way it goes on screen, the incidents, the drama, the uncertainty, the favourites dropping out. But if there's one thing that the Sandown 500 has proved, is what a fantastic lead up to Bathurst it is, because the technical problems that the teams have had, that they'll learn so much from this race, it's really further consolidated the great need for the Sandown 500 as part of the Australian motor racing character. And the weather and the conditions here have been very, very inclement, very cold, but we've had probably the best crowd the circuit's had in 10 years, approximately 25,000 people. And given the weather conditions, which is always a determinant for an outdoor sport, I'm very, very happy.
Yes, because the weather's like the Falkland Islands more than Melbourne.
Well, it's not Scott of the Antarctic, it's Davison of the Antarctic today. Everyone's rugged up, as you can see, but no, I think it's all in all, it's been a very, very successful event. The officials have done a magnificent job in trying to keep all the cars on the circuit, and I just hope the teams appreciate it and support it in the future, as I know they will.
Thank you, John Davison. Great event. Back to you, Will Hagan.
I certainly look forward to that happening. If it builds as much over the next year to next September as it did in this past year, it'll be an absolutely sensational race, because Neil Crompton, there is no atmosphere as good as that in this gigantic grandstand when the cars come roaring by.
No, I must say that when the introductions are done at the start of the race, it's tremendous to see the crowd responding to this Holden versus Ford battle that's been created this year, and there's a lot of interest out there. Peter Brock and myself were standing down there ribbing each other when the Razzes and the Raspberries and the cheers were going up, and it was very good. So it's a tremendous venue, and it's one that we must protect.
And Neil, for you, your job is very different this year. 3rd at Bathurst last year, a tremendous effort driving for Freddie Gibson in the GTR Skyline with Anders Olofsson, but then coming here with Bob Forbes, but in his team, and essentially you're sort of running that exercise, and you're the lead driver. Much more weight on your shoulders.
There's certainly plenty of reasons to grow a grey hair or two at the moment, Will, but Bob Forbes has given me an outstanding opportunity. GIO Australia and our sponsors have got right behind us, and I think we've got an A-grade effort going. We lack in very few departments. Mark Gibbs did a great job today, and really I made Mark's job difficult, which was my fault, but I think we can hold our heads pretty proud as we go to Bathurst with a competitive package.
What were your emotions at various times of the day? Are you pretty happy with qualifying, presumably?
A little disappointed, quite frankly, because I did 14.8 on an old set of tyres on Friday, and I thought, well, and Howard would know this, you bolt a new set of tyres on, you expect to make a second and a half maybe, but it didn't translate. In fact, I had to take a few swings before I could even break into the 13s, and even then it was only a 13.99, so it was hardly a time that set the world on fire. But the thing is, a couple of the other teams around us have the opportunity of using a softer tyre. We've been using our Dunlop M4C1 for the majority of the season. It's a good, reliable tyre. It's very consistent, but it doesn't produce monumental qualifying speed. So we were concerned, but today when you go out and do the motor race, the important thing, you can see that we weren't at a deficiency.
All right, well, you got a great start. You led on lap 5. What were you feeling then, lap 5, 6?
I guess I was pleased. It's always, you know, you feel good when you're at the front of the field, when you're at the sharp end of the field. I think everybody probably expected me to be a little bit flustered or to stamp my feet and spit my dummy about the Alan Jones incident, but I said to Jonesy, mate, I contributed to it, not a problem, you know. So I was pleased with my concentration levels. I got back on with the job, but I was very disappointed with the silly mistake in the wet.
Rattled by the second mistake?
Yeah, it just cheeses me off. It's the sort of thing that a bloke in a Division 2 sports sedan does when he's learning his craft. And as we look at car 55, the mobile car in the pit area, getting that attention to the splitter and front spoiler, and I see a change of placings. Alan Grice, Thomas Mazir have moved up to third place. So Troy and Steve, whilst they're getting this assistance, car 55 are going to drop back just a little bit.
So John Davison talks about this being a learning curve for Bathurst. There's been levels of almost high farce here today, haven't there? You know, the sort of crazy things have gone wrong. Would you like your windscreen cleaned at high speed, for instance?
No, not particularly with the heated screen switched on, which is probably what happened. We've got a heated screen, but I wouldn't like to throw a cold bucket of water at it. I was making a bit of fog in the early stages of the race. I thought I'll switch this on, and then I did switch it off again. But our team, the GIO team, had a problem at Bathurst last year, and they threw a bucket of water at the screen, and it wasn't that successful. But the funny thing is that this happens year in, year out.
Looking at fourth place car 55.
I said to some of our sponsors yesterday when I made an address to them that what you have to do here is recalibrate your brain and stop thinking about 20-minute crash and burn races. You've actually got to think about the things that have gone wrong in the past in endurance racing, and the weirdest stuff happens. And you know, people who are successful in Daytona and Le Mans, the problem there, the 12-hour at Bathurst, the Tui's 1000. You know, you look at, if you go back through your books, you go back through your videotapes, you look at these events, say in the last decade, and the most bizarre things happen. You do not have to do 13s around here to win the motor race.
Well, there's two guys. They qualified 8th. They won Le Mans, and Jeffrey Brabham was first to say he's nowhere near as quick as a whole pile of other guys in these cars, certainly as of yesterday. Not so much today. David Parsons, same deal. Hasn't driven a car for a long while. But look at them, where they are now, second place.
That's a great... Neil, your lead up to Bathurst is now about to start. What is on for a team? Explain to the people how you're going to get to Bathurst.
Looking at 6th place car number 41, John Trimble and Rowan Cook.
Well, we're packing the show up at the moment, Howard, and we've got some work to do in Melbourne tomorrow with one of our sponsors, and we're going to take the opportunity to also bed some brake discs and brake pads. As you'd appreciate, you consume a lot of brake material at Bathurst in the lead up and on the race day itself, so you need to prepare for that, number one. Tuesday we have a little plug here for GIO Australia. We're opening a new branch in Shepparton, so we have a promotional job, and the transporter stops off there. But we're back in Sydney on Wednesday, and then it's a complete engine rebuild, differential rebuild, gearbox rebuild, new tail shaft, new brake seals, new brake system, and a complete inspection of everything vital on the car. And that process, although I can spill it out quite quickly, probably will take us the best part of 10 days, and then we go to Bathurst on the Saturday prior to, not the immediate Saturday prior, the one prior to that, before the event.
All we see at Bathurst effectively is the cars and the refuelling in pit lane. But what will you take in terms of spare transmissions and engines, etc.? How many wheels and so on?
Well,
people, feed them.
We've got in the order of around about 22, I think 24 people, excluding catering staff. And they comprise wheel changes, wheel changing assistants, fuelers, vent bottle operators, firemen, specialist technicians on transmission related things, should I say gearbox and differential. And then we've got engine supply in our case comes from Holden Racing Team, who've done a great job for us in giving us tremendous horsepower with the Chevrolet. And so that's one area of responsibility that we don't have, although we do have 2 engines.
This is the car that's in second place at the moment, 35, Jeffrey Brabham and David Parsons.
And they're doing a good job too, aren't they?
They are.
Skippy gets around, he knows it's amazing. He doesn't do much driving, but when he does it, he does it very effectively.
He's a great little operator.
He deserves a longer run, a better run.
Yeah.
There's just a massive amount of engineering preparation goes into this race, the Sandown 500 and the Tui's 1000. you can just leave no stone unturned. It's from the tiniest, craziest, silliest little item through to the biggest of things on the agenda.
You say only one engine spare?
Well, only one engine spare. They are very expensive, Will.
So you wear out an engine and then Friday night change?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, the engine that we've run today will now be rebuilt, which was always the intention. That will be the Bathurst race engine. It seems to have good numbers, and I don't think we were deficient in any way in a straight line to our competitors today. So we know we've got a good package there, and what we'll do is put the fresh engine in now, and we'll use that for the lead up to Sunday at Bathurst.
And will you use the same tyres at Bathurst as you use here, the same Dunlops, or is there a change option for you?
We actually have another option up our sleeve, Howard, with a better front case construction, which I believe gives the car a little bit better turn in. As you see, David, here, from that point of initial turn into the apex of the turn, and for the viewers, that's the point where the car ceases to enter the corner and begins to exit the corner.
Starting to open out instead of to come in tightly.
So I believe it gives the car a crisper response, and Dunlop have been working very hard on their rubber this year, and there's been a real tyre battle, as I'm sure you've explained in the telecast, between Yokohama, Bridgestone and Dunlop, and we feel that we've got just a little bit better steering tyre available to us, but they weren't available to us at Sandown because all of the Dunlop contracted teams in Dick Johnson, Larry Perkins and myself have consumed a fair amount of rubber this year, and we've consumed probably more than our allocation because we've been trying to develop on the run. So we knew we had to come here with a minor deficiency, but I talk about minor deficiencies, we're only talking about a tiny fraction of time.
This is tail end Charlie, Colin Bond, Terry Bosanjak in the little Toyota.
We'll have the same drive tyre, Howard, so we'll have the same rear tyre on the car. It'll just be an improvement in the front, and frankly, as I'm sure both of you know from being to Bathurst in the past, it's not a real tyre sensitive circuit as it is here. Power down's vital here, and balance is really vital, but you can keep your pace up at Bathurst.
Neil, have a look at this. We've got an interesting moment coming up. This is the lead car.
Ooh.
Number 30.
Well done, Jonesy. That was the save.
He was in big trouble because he was galloping off towards the fence there. He's locked up and gone off to the right.
Terribly late braking.
Well, it just shows, the ultimate of advanced driving. Alan realised that if he left his foot jammed on the brake pedal, the wheels wouldn't turn. When your front wheels aren't turning, the car won't steer. When he came off the brake pedal, the car steered back on the road.
Gathered itself back up.
It's called ABS, isn't it?
That's right, yes. There's this new thing called ABS which does that. There's the man. Maybe he's got a little pedal problem.
He has. He's pumping the pedal. They were very worried with the team as to how far they could go on brakes, and at the last pit stop, in fact, they did have a good check of the brake pads.
It appeared to me that
they've got a problem.
Yeah, he's holding the car on the gearbox there.
A big moment. It cost him 4 seconds on his lap time. But
see him pumping the brakes there, Will. And it looks pretty slippery out there. The road temperature today is very low, and it's easy to make a mistake when you've got general lack of adhesion.
Mind you, when he got to the bottom of the hydraulics, it was enough to lock the car up, so that's they're still there, but he's losing hydraulics.
The Fred Gibson team going a little bit radical with new wheels to fit round the big brakes that they plan to have for Bathurst. It's a risk, Neil, isn't it?
Yes, but I know Fred and Mark and Jim very well. I drove for them last year, and I have the utmost respect for their team. I believe they're a dynamite combination, and if Freddie's decided to do it, then it's for a damn good reason. So they know what they're doing. It's a shame in some ways for the fans they're not here today, but they've got an engineering agenda and they're sticking to it, and it's their prerogative. And quite a few drops of water on screen here too, Will, and I noticed that John Bow had the wiper going, and that could also be the reason for Alan pumping. He may in fact be sort of locking brakes rather than having a real low pedal, and because he's locking brakes, he's actually having to pump to release the front tyres to get them turning again. So there might be more to it than meets the eye. Always hard to make engineering comment from a kilometre away.
Yes, indeed. See there, car 17, the Cameron McConville, Dick Johnson, John Bow, Falcon, that's in 9th place at the moment. And thanks for joining us, Neil Crompton. It was nice that you had the spare time, albeit that it meant disaster for you.
Thank you for having me. I'd just come back from explaining to our sponsors in their VIP suite up here what had gone wrong, so I needed to be cheered up a bit, Will.
Have a better run at Bathurst.
I'll just go and tape up these wrists.
We did enjoy your cut and thrust, very seriously, a great effort, and pity it went like that, but it's a learning curve.
Oh, that's right, and I made some mistakes that I'll learn from today, so we'll go from there. Thank you for your best wishes.
Thanks, well done. Jones is actually looking at the brake adjuster, and the brakes are not well balanced on that car at the moment. He's trying to sort it out.
So,
however, his only rival is his number 2 car, Brabham, which is catching around about 2 seconds a lap. And there's an interesting thing for young Glenn to have to make his first serious management decision as a fleet leader. Who's going to do the winning?
yes, so. And Greg Crick, Australian Sports Sedan champion, and Rod Jones in that Ampol car number 12 are 4th. So what an excellent effort. And when you look at who's where, you say, well, that car qualified 12th, and the car that's leading qualified 3rd, and 2nd place Brabham Parsons qualified in 8th place. Grice Mazira were on pole, doing extremely well. Mazira was on pole. Grice wasn't, at 16 wasn't. They'd in fact qualified back on 7th place. And Dunstan Harrington, who are in 5th place, had qualified in 9th position. But don't forget that as we have the lead car in. And now to have a look at the brakes.
And they're going for the brake change.
They were in only 13 laps ago on lap 112. It's now lap 125 completed. And Alan Jones has said they aren't doing the job.
They might also be doing this as what we call a hot change, so that again the team can learn to do that very quickly.
They did a lot of tyre stops the other day, both cars. Glenn really was working his crew very hard.
Jones has got a bit of a sweat on there.
The team which, when trying out for co-drivers and drivers for car number 35, lost a car at Phillip Island only a few weeks ago, just before the final round of the Touring Car Championship. So back in August, and a flushed Alan Jones out, and the young, lithe Glenn Seaton about to get in, and probably we'll hear from John Smales with Alan Jones.
And Glenn Seaton is not about to get in, Will. There's a problem at the rear of the car. Alan, what's wrong?
Well, it wouldn't brake. I had my foot flat on the brake, and it just wouldn't pull up at all. Then the steering wheel started to shift from its central position, which always indicates that there's something adrift at the back. And they've just said, then get out. It's something's gone at the back, and I'm not sure what sure it is at this stage.
At 280 kilometres an hour at the back straight, you wouldn't risk it, Alan.
They got my attention there a couple of times, I tell you.
So, the number 30 car out of the event.
All with a problem to be rectified. The lead car is... This is one of the moments. And when you say it got your attention, how good was the guy that recovered that one?
Excellent.
So this is lap 126 completed. Sorry, 124 or 5 completed by Seaton Jones. I'm not quite sure. 124 completed by car 30. 126 now completed by the race leader, car number 35, Geoffrey Brabham and David Parsons. Well, frankly, I wouldn't have believed it, that this far from the end of the Sandown 500 that this car would be leading. Indeed, when I've talked of the cars that could win here or the cars that could win at Bathurst, I certainly haven't mentioned the second car with those two drivers.
How clever to run the team with one car, which we've all known they've been flat out with Seaton and Jones, and this one has been in there just in the background. You've seen it on the long shot on television, just looking after it, keeping it off the curbs, and now the team's still got a car out there in the lead, and they've learned a hell of a lot about both products as to how hard they can push. It will help Bathurst enormously for these people.
What a disappointment for Glenn Seaton, twice winner in this race in 86 and in 1990. And not to say that they can't find and fix the problem, but let's hear from John Smales.
And Thomas Mazera in the pits can't believe his good luck. From 0, he's coming back to be hero again, 2nd place in the motor race. Thomas has just had a lightning 20-second pit stop. And Thomas, what did it feel like when that windscreen cracked?
Well, first thing I did is just pull my visor down. Just luckily I wear the full face helmet, and I always keep the visor on just in case something like that happened. And early on I got so much oil on the screen from Brock's car, and I was very disappointed that the officials didn't pull him off the track, because it was very unfair to other competitors to keep the car out there, and I just couldn't see the thing. Then we started chucking water on the screen when I went by the pits, and we worked a couple of times and make it better, but the third time it just broke the screen.
Thomas, have you got a heated windscreen?
Yes, we've got a heated windscreen, yeah.
So that's what possibly caused the break?
No, I wouldn't think so. No. It's just basically the pressure of the water, the impact of the water on the screen.
What's the car like to drive with a 280 km/h breeze going straight through you?
I'm not doing 200 km/h an hour, because I'm down about 400 revs down the straights, because the drag is so bad. Then, but the car is very good under braking and through the corners, because I'm getting good airflow on the wing.
You were shivering when you got out of the car. As an ex-ski instructor, how are you handling the cold?
Well, the worst thing was because I sweat a bit when I was there on the first few laps. Then we pushed the windscreen out and all the cold air at me. Then, yeah, I was quite cold there.
There's only one Falcon to go. You're still in the race with a big chance.
Well, I think we're about half a lap down, or maybe the lap, I don't know exactly, but you know, we're still not out there yet. You know, keep the fingers crossed we can finish on the podium.
Thomas Mazera, and Brad Jones is now in the car.
Sure is. Seesawing away, working very hard. And the guy that does so well at Oscar races down called the Thunderdome, now very busy in this car, and delighted finally to get a drive on race day. Alan Grice initially, then Thomas Mazera, and waiting patiently in the pits has been Brad Jones, who's second in the motor race at the moment, a motor race that's far from over. Still the race leader, but just fresh after a pit stop. It's Geoffrey Brabham back in the car now, 35, handed over to him by David Parsons in fine order, and a very quick and efficient pit stop indeed. They retained the race lead. They've completed 132 of this 161 lap race, so 29 laps now remaining. That's about a touring car championship round and a half. So still plenty of racing to come, and lots of things can happen, as we've already seen. And as I say, Geoffrey Brabham doing his first lap since getting back in the car. 130 laps completed by Thomas Mazera, Alan Grice, Brad Jones now in car number 16, that's in second place. So it's Falcon leads from Commodore, Troy Dunstan, Steve Harrington in third place, and Steve Harrington, some people may say, oh gee, but he won it last year with Larry Perkins, of course, and has been in the race on 7 previous occasions, and he's had a third, a sixth, an eighth, 2 retirements and a 17th place, and running third place at the moment with Troy Dunstan in car number 55 on behalf of the Peter Brock team. Rod Jones, Greg Cricket are in 4th place, Trimble and Rowan Cook in 5th place in 41. Then it's Brock, O'Brien, car 05 are up in 6th place. Car 30 is still covered enough laps to be counted as 7th, but Jansen and Tratt in that Toll Express car number 44 are 8th. The Johnson, Bow, Cameron McConville car 17 are in 9th, but due to move up 1 when they get past Seaton's total number of laps. And this just an excellent effort by 41 years old Geoffrey Brabham, resident of Indianapolis, son of Sir Jack, along with David and Gary, that's right. And as I say, Le Mans 24-hour winner this year, IMSA winner on a number of occasions in America, for Nissan 4 occasions, and a very accomplished, a very successful, highly respected, really respected works driver for many years, Geoffrey Brabham, winner of a recent IROC race in America against some very distinguished company indeed, and has done just a most unexpected but typically professional and excellent job this weekend for Glenn Seaton, the Peter Jackson team. Brad Jones, working car 16. This is the second place car. Very hard, Howard Marsden.
Yes, he is running very hard, but the car to us is not sounding very strong, and really really not sure if he's got a problem. His times are quite good. He's not quite the fastest car out at the moment. Still young McConville in the Dickie Johnson car 17. Falcon is the fastest car on the track. But most certainly the car's running hard, but to us it's just sounding a little bit off at the moment.
Yeah, 16 threes for Brock and O'Brien, for Johnson and Bow. Fluffy. 17.5 last lap for Brabham Parsons. And this car, 19s.
An experience for Brad, who's spent most of his time inside touring cars. This one time he's half in and half out.
Oh, it gets crossed up. You have to work and work very quickly.
And again, he's obviously been told to get into the car and get as much learning out of it as possible. Remember, part of the reasons for being here is for its own glory. To win Sandown 500, a tremendous thing to do. And that car, in fact, was smoking, by the way.
Car 28 that's been... all ends of the field. Had been up much better than this, but 15th at the moment. Waldock and Peters come to rest in the Falcon that was debuted here just this weekend.
And a great effort, a great character is Kevin Waldock, and I know he's going to go Bathurst and run a good, long, hard race.
The driver's still attached by the radio. But yes, Waldock's business is explosives, and friend and sort of team supporter is the opposition leader, Dr. John Hewson. But here's Brad Jones doing two things. One, trying out the car. Two, sharpening up Brad Jones. And I don't mean that in any critical sense of him. He wants as many hard racing kilometres as he can do. Listen to the gear change on those dog boxes on the...
That car is smoking. It's definitely going off.
Probably making him a bit frantic because he knows how hard he's driving it, yet he knows the times he's doing and in a sense not doing.
Great camera shots, because here's a man really earning his money.
Slap on a bit of opposite, straighten it up. The press button there for the radio communication with the pits, which is that bit of coiled wire to the centre of the steering wheel, the spoke.
That car's been thrown around. It weighs 1,300 kilograms. It's a bit tired in itself, as we can see from the trailing smoke. It's got some 560 odd horsepower, and he's throwing it around like a go-kart. Really good.
So the car that stayed really healthy and out of trouble and looks to have been very kindly treated by its two drivers, been very incident-free all day, is that 35 car. This 16 one, well, we know its litany of woes. The clean the windscreen job is... Oh, I still think it's marvellous. But car 55 has been treated kindly too and is running healthily. Oh, just not pulling hard, not revving up, not wanting to race up to high speed. And there's third place, 55. Troy Dunstan, Steve Harrington. Harrington, the victor here last year, co-driving with Larry Perkins. Lifts it up onto 2. Kicks it on the curb. Another pair who are looking very quick and working their car hard. Locked up on the left front. But car 16 in second place has a margin of more than a lap over this car, number 55. So it's this gap plus the lap between the two of them. So interesting motor race, this Sandown 500, Howard Marsden, and
that's right. And this car, I think, will start to go more slowly. And let's go down to John Smales just before the course car's gone out.
And Howard Marsden, your concerns about the Holden Racing Team Commodore are very much shared by the Commodore's engine man, Rob Benson. Rob's been working on his in-car telemetry here. And Rob, what are you seeing about the car?
I'm seeing that the lambda sensors, which tell us the mixture strength, are running richer than they have done all day. And I think it's because the muffler that we put on the car, which we were over the noise limit, so we had to put a bigger muffler on. It's starting to collapse inside on one bank, and as you see here, one is very much lower than the other. And so I'd say on the left-hand bank there, we're running very rich.
So that's what's making the car sound off song?
Yeah, it actually is off song. It's losing some of its horsepower. So I'd say be down 20 or 30 horsepower maybe.
This Motec telemetry is just sensational, isn't it, for you to be able to tell that from the pits?
Yes, yeah, it's very good. You know, it's not all hooked up yet, but the bits we have got hooked up are proving to be, you know, mostly good for us.
Well, the car's obviously become behind the pace car at the moment because he's right off the throttle.
Yeah, yeah, if he's behind the pace car, that's our throttle position there. You can see he's just feathering it along, so if the pace car's out, then that'll be right.
Well, Benson, is the car going to get to the finish line?
A good question. Yeah, I think it should do. Like, if it's only just the muffler and it's just collapsed a little bit, then it's not a problem.
So, marvellous stuff that, and Neil Crompton's team has similar because they share engines from the Holden Racing team. They lease engines from the Holden Racing team. And, as I say, and look at that. 05, the car that's 5th. Said plenty was still to come, said plenty could still go wrong, and it has, and it is. So, that driver trying to reach across and rectify something.
Can't be another throttle cable, can it?
Oh dear, it's bizarre. The number of problems they've had. And the cars that have now come forward, this is a general clearing effort as well, as you can see. Car 11 that led the race for 14 or 15 laps. One of, let me think, we had Mazira in 16, we had Crompton in 7, we had car 11, we had 30, that's 4 litres, we've had 35, it's 5 litres, we had 55, is 6 litres.
And it's fabulous.
We've had 6 different leaders in this race. If they get that many at Bathurst, they'll be going well.
And I tell you what, if they have this number of dead cars, they're going to have a fair number of pace cars out, aren't they? But again, learning curve, the boys know how hard to push the cars. It might not have quite these number of problems at Bathurst, despite it being a longer race.
Surprising, because don't remember, they come, no, don't forget, don't remember
either.
They come to this race fresh from a whole pile of short sprint races, and the mindset is totally different to do this. And this is why it is so valuable. And Howard Marsden, when you think of it, even for Freddie Gibson's team, good though they are, it's valuable long-distance practice missed for such as Alan Moffat, yet to finish building a motor car. It is a massive task to go to Bathurst and to be practiced as well as being competitive in the car actual setting up and so on.
Yes, and the infrastructure that goes with it, everything from making sure the bloke's running the barbecue properly down to the blokes who are changing the wheels and tyres. A team wins Bathurst, and a team learns a hell of a lot of how to do that here at Sandown.
Glenn Seaton's done it, seemed to be cruising to victory. And rather like the Mazda team here last February when they discovered a minor problem in their car about camber adjustment, and they made sure it never happened again. They went on from a defeat here to a glorious 1-2 victory at Bathurst just a month or so later at Easter in the James Hardy 12-hour. So everybody regrouping, and Larry Perkins, the driver of car 11, when it set the new lap record at 1:14.759, just under John Bowes' 1:14.81, the previous lap record here. And the race being led by car 35, the Falcon of Jeff Brabham and David Parsons, from the Holden Commodore number 16 of Alan Grice, Thomas Mazira and Brad Jones. And 2 laps between the 2 of them, particularly as the cars now bunch up. And car 55 in 3rd place, minus a lap, but on the same number of laps, in other words with car 12 able to threaten. So 55 in 3rd place, car 12 Rod Jones, Greg Crick in 4th place. The battle that could ensue from this moment. Both of them 137 laps completed, 3 laps less than the race leader. And then Trimble and Rowan Cook, John Trimble in 41, doing a grand job for very much an amateur driver and a young inexperienced driver, talented one out of the HQ Holden ranks in Rowan Cook in car 41. They've completed 135 laps. and then was Peter Brock, Charlie O'Brien, till they stopped involuntarily. So it's 44, and that's the car, the toll transport of Peter Jansen and Tratt. So Anthony Tratt it is in the Holden Commodore VL, number 44. So we have VL Commodores lying 5th, 6th, and that's a pretty good performance for people with a car. We've had VN, VP and VR since then. They have a 4-model old car. And very unhappy times for the Brock team. The master of Sandown over past years, the master of Bathurst over past years, but finding that 10th double-figure victory very elusive indeed. Out of the race, well, we've seen Colin Bond, Terry Bosanjak. They were soldiering around in 22nd and last position. Chris Smurden, Brett Youlden, they had a spin in that light blue Commodore 39 one stage, and Mark Poole was to share the car with them. Larry Perkins, Greg Hansford went out in spectacular fashion when they had the engine go.
I think the racing will start again after this lap. They seem to have cleared the course of all of the dead cars. Everybody's lined up, and we should see the flag start this time round.
So it was a long time ago trying to tell the story of Greg Hansford at the Spanish Grand Prix with Kenny Roberts, and he's gone now, but just so you're not left on tenterhooks not hearing the punchline of the joke. But Roberts to ride a 500, Hansford to ride a 250 have arrived at the Spanish Grand Prix, and the organisers have both refused their entry. They said you don't have enough experience. They've argued for a day. They've lost 1 of 2 days of practice and qualifying. They've finally convinced them that they won't get in other people's way. They'll behave themselves. Please, could we have a run? They've said go on, then get out of our hair. Roberts has won the 500 race. Hansford's won the 250, which was a pretty fair effort for people who'd lost half of their practice and qualifying, and that was the talent of Greg Hansford as they race away again. 5 pace car periods and 14 laps.
Brabham showing his experience there and has sneaked a good 5-second lead off the rest of the fast-running cars.
Nobody knows more about picking up after a pace car than the people out of American Oval racing and indeed endurance racing. Now, it's a thing that used to be scoffed at by the road race purists. Pick your way around the rubble and the cars and everything else. The racing at all costs continues used to be the philosophy, but American Oval practices come in. I don't know that I always totally welcome it, but it does have great safety features, as we see there an enormous battle going on between Brad Jones and car 55 that's in 3rd place. So
what's important is the car 12 behind them in 4th place, which is the Jones and Crick Commodore, which is the battle between 3rd and 4th place.
Yes. So this is good racing now. The Sandown 500, 142 laps completed, so 19 remaining in this momentous motor race, just 3 weeks before the Tooheys 1000 at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. And probably about 5 seconds. Let's have a look at it.
I think that is correct, Will. It's just under 2 seconds.
Yes, so I was guessing, but 1.795 between 3rd placed 55 Dunstan Harrington and 4th placed Jones Crick in car number 12. Crick, of course, the guy who in a Honda NSX has won the last 2 Targa Tasmanias, the 2 that have been held so far, doing phenomenal speeds over everyday Tasmanian roads. They're more interesting down in Tassie, I think. Tighter, greener, more covered with forestry. And there you see the gap on this marvellous scoring system that we have here on SBS. That's 4th place. There's 3rd. the yellow car in front.
Having a lot of trouble getting past that Donahan car. Managed it now, should clear out.
And Paul, one of the later oil companies to come on into motor racing, and at the moment the leading oil company backed car in the race, so beating Mobil, which is Peter Brock. Sorry, they're chasing Mobil, car 55. This is the lead Mobil car, but they're ahead of Shell, ahead of Caltex, and others who are here. So
now there's the laptop that's being plugged into the engine management system. They're trying to read down what's wrong with that car and what area they need to go to make their adjustments to get that car back on the road if they possibly can.
They can actually rerun what the car's done out on the track, and it can run round the track showing where the car was as it changed gear, what revs it did and so on. Alternatively, you could look at what we saw earlier, and that is the throttle opening, the manifold vacuum, the revs that the car's doing and so on, and ultimately when they get the sensors installed, what gear they're in and what speed they're doing. It's exactly the same sender system as we have in Formula One. There's third going out of picture, here's fourth chasing. So good motor racing and everybody trying hard, and that's what it's all about. And the race leader, 35, Geoffrey Brabham at the wheel, is 16 laps from victory. 16 laps from the scheduled race end time. One hesitates to say victory. 5 previous cars have led the race and fallen by this very accommodating 3.2 kilometre wayside. There's been plenty of it. Well, very sideways for Brad Jones.
No, not for Brad Jones.
So there's Brad Jones, and then Rod Jones, and then the Dick Johnson team car. Yes, and let's get our Joneses right. It's Bob Jones in 12. Well said. Bob Jones in that car that's in 4th place with Greg Crick, number 12. And 15 laps remaining now. 146 completed. So 48 kilometres from race end for Geoffrey Brabham. David Parsons in car number 35 that leads the motor race by 2 laps over Thomas Mazera, Alan Grice and Brad Jones. And then 55, Troy Dunstan is 1 lap behind Steve Harrington, being chased by Bob Jones, Greg Crick, 4th place, car number 12. And the gap going up to 5.25 seconds. So car 55 in command on behalf of the Peter Brock team.
It's interesting how much trouble Dickie's having getting past that Jones car.
And I think McConville again, is it, in 17 still? 8th place, and he's putting in the laps to give him race time familiarisation. And 8th in the field behind Peter Brock in car 5, Charlie O'Brien holding 7th, Peter Jansen and Anthony Tratt in 44 in 6th place. 4 of them, John Trimble and Rowan Cook in 41, 5th place. And forward of 5th place is this car, 4th. Bob Jones saying back. Not able to pin back. I think it must be Bob Jones in 12. He's been around a long time. He's done stints at Speedway. He's been in sports sedans, all sorts of categories. And Cameron McConville says, pardon me, but I insist.
grand tracking shot there.
Tremendous.
And have a bit back again. Yes.
Good stuff.
The boy wanted experience and he's getting it.
Very nice too. Good stuff. It's a lovely flowing track, this outside Sandown track. It reminds me of what they did to the Nürburgring when they made it comply with Grand Prix regulations and people walked away from it in droves, and what the public and competitors thought of the Grand Prix track here at Sandown was shown by some of those World Championship sports car races in 84, 88. The outright lap record holder still John Louis Schlesser here at Sandown in that Mercedes-Benz. But this is the good Sandown track around the outside. It's a good, fast-flowing track. It's a track where you have to be able to drive and you have to be brave if you're to go over the top there at proper race speed. And the crowd love it. They can see it too well from the stand. And the competitors like it too. That infield is Mickey Mouse. So this great battle continues. McConville goes the other side this time, and a little bit more determined.
But he didn't close the door.
Oh dear me, that's a big moment.
He's going to go.
Gone.
It's gone.
It's a big crash coming up.
Ah, dear. Ah, good. Not hurt.
Boy, oh boy, that was on for a long time. And in fourth place, car number 12, and in very brave situation, seventh place, car number 17. And well done, Bob Jones. Well, not in sense of that they collided, but the way he gathered it up. And look at this, he suddenly said, hang on a moment, there's a spot down the other way here. Boy, that was great thinking. And in 17, it was a long, fast, frightening ride.
Now, the trouble there is young McConville took Jones, but did not come across and close the door and get the proper braking position for himself and allowed Jones to rage up inside him. I remember very clearly we were running George Fury when he was learning his trades, and the Bluebirds at Amaru, we lapped Alan Grice, exactly the same thing happened, got past, away from Grice, did not close the door definitely on Grice, and Grice came back and a worse accident.
Was that when he hit the fence
exactly
outside the pit counter there? Yes. George had a big one there. Well, good hard charging, good argumentative motor racing here in the Sandown 500. And very entertaining stuff indeed. And still in seventh place is car number 17 in a race situation that's been fascinating all through. And this is it, with some 12 laps remaining. Being in the top three of the Sandown 500 is a precarious business, vis-a-vis car number 16. Brad Jones, horrified at the problems now in the car, going nowhere, out of second place, suddenly bringing 55. Troy Dunstan, Steve Harrington up into third place. Well, I don't know what he's discovered or how he's going to get it anywhere. This is the situation at 153 completed by Brabham Parsons, but 16 there in more trouble, so everybody up one. Jones Crick headed for the dais at this stage in car 12, and that, to get it right again, is Bob Jones, Greg Crick, and a very disappointed Brad Jones. He was disappointed at being put in the middle stint with Alan Grice in car 16. Then it was delayed even further when Thomas Mazira took over the car. Saw the sort of state it was in when he was able to take it over anyway. And in the meantime, the car, as you were saying, Howard Marsden, it's been treated very sympathetically all day. And what's your theory on car 30, on what might have gone wrong?
Well, they did say that they were going to run very hard, and we commented all the way through the afternoon. Both Jones and Seaton were bouncing the car off the curbs, and completely deliberately, because the boys are skilled enough not to do it unless they want to do it. And I believe they might well have broken a rear suspension arm, the rear trailing arm that controlled the back axle might well have been the result of that heavy banging around of the car. So what they've learned from today is how hard they can run the car off the curbs at Bathurst, This particular car has been run, obviously, again, according to the rules of the team. Keep it clean, keep it going, and that is the type of winning program that's going to get them here today, it looks, and it may well be the sort of winning program to get them there at Bathurst.
Well, here's one for Nigel Greenway, and I think I already know the answer. How many Le Mans winning drivers have won the Sandown 500? And this is the first one. Jeffrey Brabham.
Because he hasn't done it yet.
He hasn't done it yet. And boy, there is a hex on anybody that's up front in this race. 6 different race leaders, and only one has survived in any sort of healthy state at all. And Troy Dunstan, Steve Harrington. Now there's Brad Jones, and lovely guy, very successful in Oscars, very disappointed. The Holland Racing team car today. Down in the pits, John Smales.
And for the second time today, regrettably, someone's thrown cold water all over Thomas Mazera's plans. Thomas, what's gone wrong this time?
I'm not exactly sure. The car stopped on a back straight, then we don't know. I can't comment on that at the moment.
How do you feel after a day like today?
Oh, well, what can you do? You know, it's motor racing. Then we'll see what went wrong, and we make sure it won't happen 3 weeks' time at Bathurst.
All the telemetry won't tell you what occurred at this time?
No, nothing on the telemetry now.
What about Brad Jones through the radio?
He talked to Jeff, and he said it just stops, and he lifted the bonnet up and is looking into it. I don't know what it is.
Thomas, look forward to seeing you at Bathurst.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Been brought to my attention that one that has led the race, one of the 6, is surviving in very healthy form and is back in second place for no reason other than that car 35's been a tad quicker, and that's of course 55 Dunstan and Harrington. They were one of the 6 leaders, but for the other 4 it's been an unhappy time.
It has. In fact, it's interesting now to look at the top 10, and just getting into the top 10 is Kevin Burton and Mal Rose in the first of the series production Group E Ford Falcons. And they've done exactly what they said they would do all day long, is to run round, keep out of trouble, keep the car going, and they're going to be rewarded at the moment with a top 10 position.
That's car number 10, the black Falcon that Kevin Burton runs regularly in long-distance Group E races. As 4 laps remain now, 157 laps completed, and it's got quite a bit of, there it is, Melrose gear on it. Kevin Burton, his wife Helen, very enthusiastic runners of the car, and Melrose, who's a very hard charger in Group E cars. And as I say, he's brought some of his expertise, some of his bits to that car today, and blow me down. Into 10th place goes a virtually road-going Falcon. And car 55 now. We said all the cars that have led the race have failed to survive. I was corrected by Nigel Greenway, and can you honestly believe it? There's the 5th of the 6 leaders, and in second place, and Bob Jones, Greg Crick in car 12, John Trimble from the Daily Planet, a relaxation place for men in Melbourne, and Rowan Cook will be into 3rd place. And Trimble is a very amateur driver indeed, who's been shown the way around a little bit by Alan Grice, but this is just unbelievable. 158 laps completed by Brabham Parsons, so 3 only remaining. And here is 31 from Castle Hill, and that car a long way down. It's in 20th place, Monday and Scott. But here we go.
I think that was another piece of a piston has just gone out. A bit of a flame, a bit of smoke.
Dear oh dearie me. Well, there's a lot of very serious rebuilding and a very serious analysis of what's gone wrong with a lot of cars to be done in the next 3 weeks, because there really has been absolute decimation of cars here today. Hello?
Can't believe he's gone out again.
Kidding.
I
don't know what that's all about.
So he can be a finisher.
So he can be, well, 100 and... Yeah, he could finish 3rd, okay.
That's if the black flag doesn't get him first.
Yes. Well, I'd say drop it in a very high gear and make it do very few revs. What do you think, Howard Marsden?
Well, I think that he should come possibly round to just the front straight, run it slowly, and then just trickle over the start-finish line. Maybe his trick, and therefore he's actually got there 2 laps to go.
He could actually stay in the pits and drive down out of the pits.
Well, he
to
could
the finish line.
Exactly right. And he's 3 laps up at the moment, so he could well make it.
You know where the problem is? It's on the left bank, isn't it? The right bank doesn't look too bad.
No, I think they both come out of the one side
right.
and cross over.
Yes, that's right.
But I would say the black flag, if he goes past the pits, they'll get him on the black flag.
And there, just going out of picture on the left, is the Falcon that now will... No, he'll still be 10th, won't he?
No, I think he's going to go up.
Well, this is Stephen Harrington. And this is the race leader. Jeffrey Brabham, he's coming round to complete lap 160 and to go out on his final. Best they make this a very slow one for car number 55. And 55 can finish in 3rd. It will keep Trimble and Rowan Cook in car 41 off the dais if it gets to the finish line, as 35 comes up towards the finishing line, and in about another minute 20, if 55 can keep going, it will claim 3rd place.
He should actually have been going more slowly and allowed the lead car to take him one more time.
Yes. I would have said, as I say, up into pit lane and come back slowly out of that.
Exactly.
Because there's even a run down off there. No, they've done it.
He's going to do another complete lap now.
Oh, he's picked up speed and enthusiasm. But he gains nothing by doing that, and he risks everything. Another 3.2 kilometres, but anyway. The crowd love it. It's not the last bit of smoke that's been seen around Sandown. But look at the job done by Jeffrey Brabham and by David Parsons. And, well, one can't speak highly enough of both of them. First time in this race for Brabham. For David Parsons. 10 previous runs here. He started here in 82. Was 16th on the grid and retired. He retired the following year. He came 3rd with John Harvey for the dealer team in 84, as victory for Peter Jackson and for Jeffrey Brabham and for David Parsons as he comes towards the finishing line in a time of just over 3 hours and 40 minutes in the Sandown 500. And into 2nd place should come Bob Jones and Greg Crick in car number 12, 161 laps completed by car 35. Car 55 has presently completed 156. There goes the Daily Planet car that'll come into 4th place. It'll be held out from 3rd place from the dais by the lame car 55 soldiering round. But 2nd place yet to arrive and will finish 3 laps down. And Kevin Waldock, I notice, soldiering on healthily. So he's done well. There you see 3rd place, car 55. So, although he risked plenty by taking off on that lap, he made it pay off. So he takes 3rd just as 2nd comes across the line. So 3rd finished just in front on the track, car 55. Ahead of it, but 2nd place to Bob Jones, Greg Crick in car 12, 3rd place to Troy Dunstan, Steve Harrington in car 55, and Ian Campbell down in the pits.
Most ridiculous question I could ask Glenn Seaton right now, is he happy?
I'm very happy. Like, the cars, we've driven them hard all day, and really it's a credit to the guys in the team, because it's been a long road previous years, but this is just fantastic.
There's been a few worrying moments today. Did you think you were out in the ballpark at any stage?
Not really. Alan drove a fantastic race early in the race, and he really set the pace, I think. And the car just went along so well, and it's just little things which I'm glad we sort of sorted out for this weekend for Bathurst, because I think we're really going to Bathurst with the best package. The Commodores, sort of, a lot of them fell to bits today, but we didn't have the Winfield team here, and it's really going to be great to get to Bathurst, because I think we've got the best package at the moment.
Glenn has been to victory lane before, but let me tell you, we'll let him go down now, because I think there's going to be a great party in the Ford camp tonight.
Well, That's the effort of great team preparation and planning, and it seems much more to me, Howard Marsden, than 12 months ago that this formula started and that Glenn Seaton debuted. That car struggled through with qualifying at 1:17.8 here, went 4 odd seconds faster now, and finally 12 months later, with an enormous amount of preparation, testing and professional driving and great team backup, has come out victorious after winning, of course, the Touring Car Championship.
It's a great example of how to run a team and how to keep the whole thing running properly. What a clever thing to actually put together a man of experience of Brabham together with, as you were saying, Parsons from a Tasmanian dairy farming, and get them together, make them work together and give the team a win. It's fantastic.
And to survive, when you look at it another way, that in the selection of the drivers for those two cars, the 4 drivers needed, they wrote off a car at Phillip Island back in August. They had to rebuild, well, they were building another car anyway, but they had to hasten the build of that. They had to run it at Oran Park, and then they got here, selected Geoffrey Brabham, and he has done a superb job, and so has David Parsons, and I commend them both. I reckon it's sensational. So it's been a great effort. They did it in a time slower than Seaton and Fury, the fastest race on this track back in 1990. That was in a time of 3 hours 32 minutes and 42 seconds. The race time today, 3 hours 41 minutes, 26.21, with 57.1 seconds back to second place, plus 3 laps. The deficit between car 12, second placed Bob Jones, Greg Crick, first place Geoffrey Brabham, David Parsons in car 35, and 1 lap further back to Troy Dunstan in third place in car 55 with Steve Harrington. And so victory to Ford Falcon here, a big comeback. And although Holden and Ford have had 12 pole positions each in the Sandown 500, Ford comes up, I think, to 7 victories, by comparison with Holden, that's had something like 12. So 7 victories and indeed 12 to Holden. So,
but I think what's interesting is you can see that 1 Falcon up at the front and the number of Commodores that are coming up behind. So the Falcons just hung in on this occasion. Will they do it in 3 weeks' time?
Do you still stick to your verdict earlier that the regulation shouldn't be changed until after Bathurst?
Exactly right. We've had a good balanced race here. Nobody had an advantage from a product viewpoint, but one team had an advantage from their own abilities.
Howard, you've been in team manager role before with Alan Moffat many times. If you were a team manager and you were looking over the chaos that's been run today, how would you be feeling with your major race 3 weeks away?
If I was one of the people with the problems, I would be a very worried man, and I have been there before and have been a worried man before. But I think the message is there that they will, I think, really look at the Seaton team at Bathurst and decide that's the pace at which we are going to run, and they're going to have to run around the Seaton car. The Gibson car is yet to arrive, so Bathurst is going to be very exciting because we're expecting great things out of that team as well, because they're doing a lot of testing despite not being here today. So you've got those teams out in the front. You can't pull out the Johnson team because they're there as well. Brock. It's going to be just a wonderful race, just as we've had a super race to here
and
today.
Some top drivers still to come, people like Paul Radisich and John Cleland out of the British Touring Car Championship, both victors in that championship this year in one of the closest, hardest run championships. We think we've seen a lot of biffo this year in Australia.
That's right.
And very minor by comparison with what's been going on over in Britain.
That's exactly right. So we've got a lot to come from the race, but today's just been a remarkable event in that we've had a number of leaders, we've had a number of people making driving mistakes, we've had a number of teams make mistakes, in fact, in not taking advantage on stopping when you've got the course car out. So there's a lot of team management work to be done yet. Tyres, we're hearing that there's more to come from tyres as well. So the race has stood well on its own. It's been a grand race, but it leads us forward into something that's going to be really terribly exciting.
As I say, this race on its own, I think, any race that has 6 different leaders from 2 different marques, the major marques running the race, you have no complaint. You say you're having good motor racing, and for all that I and others have been critical of this formula and the way it's been done to some degree. And I think the way it's been done to some degree is the fact that you're having the sort of arguments that we're getting now about the regulations, because it is a juggled sort of a formula. And whenever you juggle, you get some of the jugglers complaining. But we'll be back shortly to give you full review and wrap up and presentation of this Sandown 500.
And welcome back to Sandown. What a marvellous race we saw. A fairy tale result, really. Jeff Brabham off the plane, 10 years out of the country, steps in the car and comes up with a victory. We'll talk to Jeff in a moment. First of all, let's cross to John Smales to talk to the place getters.
And a sensational race in third position. Troy Dunstan and Steve Harrington, congratulations very much. But Troy, 3 laps from the end, the car blew up. What happened?
No, it didn't. Yeah, well, I think it did, actually. We're looking by the smoke. But I just coming down the main straight past the pits and pulled 6th gear and just sort of started running on 7 cylinders and pumping the oil out the exhaust pipe, I think. So.
You thought the race was over?
Yeah, I came into the pits, so I didn't know if they were going to let me stay out there. And with that much smoke, I apologise to all the competitors for that. But
what happened when you came into the pits?
Well, they said there's nothing we could do. Just go out, finish, wait till David and Jeff had gone through and we could finish the race. We'd probably hold our position, which we have, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Steve, you won last year. You saw the race just falling away from you 3 laps from the end. You thought it was all over, didn't you?
Yeah, I definitely did, John, but thankfully Troy called into the Quick's food store there and put a can of Mobil 1 in it and it got us home.
Well done, fellas. Congratulations. Look forward to seeing you at Bathurst.
No worries.
Second place in the Sandown 500 today, and probably the only team that's had an absolutely faultless run, Bob Jones and Greg Crick. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bob, it was totally without problem.
Oh, absolutely without problem. Run to schedule all day. We've got that marvellous Max 3 oil in there and it just kept on going. It didn't go bang.
Well, 2 pit stops, 1 pad change. You can't ask much better than that.
No, we went, as I say, we went according to the schedule all day. Cricky got in and did his bit and allowed me the glory at the end. But no, it's just absolutely faultless. The crew have done a marvellous job. And Ampol are absolutely wrapped, I can tell you now.
Greg, more fun than a Tiger Tasmania?
No, it's fantastic, and I think it's a great result for the privateers. It's great.
Well done, fellas. Let's go now to the people who've won the race today, Jeffrey Brabham and David Parsons. With them, John Davidson, the promoter of Sandown International.
Thanks, Jono. Well done, fellas. Yes. What a fantastic dream for a public relations spokesman. You've got the international well-spoken 4 times winner of the IMSA series, son of a 3 times Formula 1 world champion, an innovator, constructor of his own cars, co-driving with a boy from Tasmania who's a dairy farmer who burns stumps in his paddock. What a fantastic dream for Australia. It's absolutely perfect. Fellas, the Lex Davison Trophy for the Sandown 500, magnificently deserved by a superbly prepared team.
John, thank you. Fellas, congratulations. Absolutely superb. There's a tear in David Parsons' eye right here. I can see it happening. David, how do you feel about this?
Oh, look, it's absolutely fantastic. The team, the car. But the car just ran absolutely fantastic. And it was good to actually leave Tasmania and get over and have a run.
Jeffrey, how do you feel about running with a guy like this who does so little motor racing and he just brought the car home for you?
Well, I can't believe he does so little racing. He just did a fantastic job today, and so did the whole Peter Jackson team. They were just, it came down to the survival of the fittest, and certainly our car was the best, and it ran faultlessly all day. And apart from a little hiccup in the pit stop when one of the yellows, we really just had a dream race, and it was just great to come back to Australia and win a race here.
Tell me about that hiccup in the pit stop. You lost 1 minute and 40 in the pits when you should have maybe been down only 40 seconds. What happened?
Basically, it was my radios were giving me some trouble, and they said stay out, and I came in. So it was basically my fault. But we got away with it, and the team just did a great job. So to come back and drive for them and to win here at Sandown is just a great thrill for me.
Jeffrey, there's been a lot of things you've wanted to do in your life. The IMSA Championship, of course, Le Mans this year, now the Sandown 500. What's left in an illustrious career?
Well, in 2 weeks I've got Bathurst, so that's the one I want to win. So I'm just really happy. I haven't really got a full-time drive, but the last 3 races I've won each one, all in different continents. So I'm very proud of that.
Tell me about the Bathurst desire to win that race. Why?
Well, I mean, it's Australia's greatest race, you know, and I miss home, I miss racing here in Australia, and I don't get the opportunity to come back very often, and to come back and compete for Australia's greatest race in Australia's probably best touring car team is exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, the Sandown 500, of course, is a great warm-up to the Tooheys 1000 at Bathurst, and it deserves its place in the Australian motor racing calendar. This race, David Parsons, Jeff Brabham, congratulations.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, fellas, up for the Jeffrey. Now for the public presentation.
Oh dear, it's a bit of a pity when you remember him having his first race, Jeffrey Brabham.
Yes, it is.
At Warwick Farm. I commentated on that, a 7-lapper around the 0.9 of a kilometre little track. And when he went to collect his licence from Jeff Sykes at the end of the day, Jeff said to Betty Brabham, I suppose you'd rather I didn't sign this.
Right.
And she said, I can't go through it all again. But she has, and Jeffrey has. And has far out-earned his father, which says a lot, because his father was one of the great negotiators of motor racing, as well as one of the shrewd engineer drivers. And it's been an excellent effort here, and he's obviously learnt plenty from old Sir Jack in the way to look after a car, to plan a race. Not that Sir Jack ever really did much long-distance racing. He did tackle a few, but he didn't have the sort of success that Jeffrey has. But this has been an excellent effort by Jeffrey in his first look at this race and this track, and greatly backed up, superbly backed up by David Parsons.
Yes, I think that Jeff said it all down there. The combination of those two and that team has got the result today, and in a funny way, the lead car has got to watch itself at Bathurst, because those two boys obviously want to win together again.
That's right, and they know how to look after a car. Mind you, the lead car too. The two drivers there, Alan Jones and Glenn Seaton, know what can and can't be done now. And Bathurst is a different sort of a track, isn't it? It's not one where you can throw it at the curbs quite so hard. It doesn't have the same sort of hard impact curbs as here, perhaps.
No, it doesn't. It's a more wearing race mechanically, and I've been a bit surprised as to how many engines, in fact, have blown here. The engines are regulated to 7,500 RPM and only 10-to-1 compression ratio, and they should be running all day long. And
you were telling me a few weeks ago when we were driving together through the countryside in the XR8 Sprints that they'll be reliable. The engines will go all day.
Wrong again.
And you've been wrong.
Indeed, wrong again.
Because the engines have been the major problem today, haven't they? And that was one of the things of this formula. They were going to be super reliable. They were going to be cheap. They're not cheap. These engines are $55, in fact, I think towards $65,000,
right.
aren't they?
That's right.
And they haven't been reliable either. So in that sense, they haven't been as good as they should be. Larry Perkins runs a Holden-based engine. A lot of the other Holden runners are running Chevrolet-based engines, and the Ford engines are also ex the United States. Is that right?
Yes, they are, and at the moment their reliability seems to be quite reasonable on the Ford side, and obviously the Chevrolet stuff, which has been around for so long.
Yes,
now.
And it's a preferred engine almost,
exactly
isn't
right.
it, of that sort of thing. The
Right.
sport sedan people tend to use them.
So I think there's a lot of midnight oil to be spent by the engine people, particularly on the Commodore side. The cars are obviously very fast. If by any chance at Bathurst they get a bit of a wet run, they're obviously again very quick off tight corners when traction is necessary. So the Commodore Falcon race is not yet understood as to truly which is the fastest car.
And the
find out.
And the revival of this race, Howard, that's really a great thing for Melbourne, isn't it? And for the motor race calendar. I mean, this race has been a very big one in past years. It did fall down, Sandown Circuit did, but it was great to see it back, and great to see, in fact, the sort of race that we've had here today. We might go back and have a look at some of those highlights. And the race that we saw starting here some 3 3/4 hours ago, from a great all-Holden front row of the grid, and the lead Glenn Seaton team car trying to thrust for the lead early on, but failing quite to pull that off. Larry Perkins there, strong and healthy early on in the race. A race that saw 6 different leaders, and this one for only 4 laps. Thomas Mazera in car 16. The view from his team car that he finally got into. Alan Grice further back in the race. They qualified back in about 9th, but by lap 5 they were in trouble. And they'd handed the lead over to Neil Crompton. Very briefly in the GIO car number 7, led us to 5 or 6 pace car periods. I think it must have been, in fact, about 6. And then the race leader on lap 5 through into lap 6 was Crompton.
And a slight coming together there with Jones.
Yeah, and his day just got worse from there. Not better, worse. And very sporting of Crompton, I think, to recognise that.
Extremely well this year.
Yes, but also to recognise his error, as he then did here.
And that was his.
He said that was the previous one was part my error. This one was totally. And things got worse from here.
Yeah, indeed.
It still wasn't the low of the day.
Just starting. But you can see where the rain's been down during the earlier part of the day, and the slipperiness meant that these people can go round very easily. They're right on the knife's edge here.
And when we heard Neil Crompton talking about, it's a little bit black down there. The things a driver has to perceive to work out, but then again, the things that teams can't allow for the end pulling out of a throttle cable, such as happened to Dick Johnson's car, the only car that Dick's never won, the only major race that he's never won in Australia. And then Mark Gibbs now at the wheel of car number 7, that was one of 6 race leaders of this memorable Sandown 500, but off to the pits for that car with a leaking oil cooler. The splitter at the front on the front spoiler had got into the oil cooler, and Peter Brock was to suffer, had suffered through a lot of the race from leaking oil, but finally the officials and the rest of the competitors didn't want any more of it, so they had to try and soldier on to solve that problem for a car that finally finished in 10th place. And then let's clean the screen, and no hope. That was one of the crazier episodes of the day, and one I suspect that won't recur for this reason. I was saying Peter Brock finished 10th. He didn't. He's a non-finisher when the official results.
So there's a cold run coming up for the drivers of this car from now on, but they did soldier on, nearly got through, not quite.
And they finally,
that's Larry's
classified as a non-finisher too, as was Larry Perkins, the new lap record holder, fastest lap of the race and below the previous lap record when Greg Hansford was driving. Went on to 7 cylinders. They said keep going. He did for as long as he could. And then something broken at the rear here, Howard.
Right, indeed. Almost certainly the braking troubles they're having there is because they've broken the part of the suspension. They retired the car within 2 laps of that particular shot. So Jonesy did terribly well to hang on to that car and not lose it over the edge.
And Brock in further trouble. One of many, many cars recovered around the track. 23 started the race, and indeed 12 classified at the finish. 3 not classified, and the remainder's non-finishers. But this
is young Cameron McCobbin having a great lesson in when you pass one of the more aggressive drivers, come back across him, take your line, take your position through, otherwise he'll break back underneath you.
And amazingly, the car that he was arguing with, well, they both soldiered on, in fact. Dick Johnson to continue on and to finish in 6th place, and the other car that he'd been arguing with to finish much better than that. So really an incident-packed day down here at Sandown. A thrilling Sandown 500, which I've greatly enjoyed, Howard Marsden. But it wasn't the only race on the program, though, was it? We saw plenty of other good motor racing here. So one of the other races that we saw was in fact a Thunder Sports race earlier in the day. We'll come to that in just a moment, but we've seen the presentations. Let's have a look now at the official results of this Sandown 500. A race started in 1964, won then in an Alfa Romeo by Dr. Roberto Busanello, a official Alfa factory driver at that stage. But here, Ford Falcon victorious over the Holden Commodores of Jones and Crick, number 12, the Commodore 55 of Dunstan and Harrington, and then a Commodore in 4th place, Commodore in 5th place. So an outstanding result for Commodore, but not the big maiden placing that they wanted. 6th came up Dick Johnson, 7th the Phoenix Motorsport entry, Gassati and Ellery, and then Group E, goodness gracious, Burton, Kevin Burton and Mal Rose, and indeed backed up by other Group E cars in 9th and 10th, coming in the top 10 of the race. Getting on to 11th and 12th place, the only other survivors, because not classified at the finish was Chris Muscat. Also, car 21, the Mokapan Coffee entry of the Donahers, and car 31, the Kart Mania entry. And then we got on to the retirements from there. And the Holden Racing Team cars, Brock and O'Brien, Seaton and Jones, that looked to have the race well wrapped up. Perkins and Hansford were trying to fight with them, and we were hoping for Larry to get back in the car and to see what he would do when he put on the last third of the race and the real frantic run to the finishing line. So car 39, but then behind them even was some further non-finishers, and 3 others not classified, including Colin Bond in the Caltex Team Toyota. So really a great day for the battle between Ford and Holden. A disappointing day in terms of reliability. Everything there for Holden but victory. And lots of work to be done in the next few weeks.
Entirely right. And I think that the Group A boys have put on a good show. The Group E boys ran well. The 2 litres were disappointing today. Let's see how they do at Bathurst.
Yes, because we saw that converted Sierra with the turbo off, running as a 2-litre car, and it had a myriad of problems and ultimately not classified at the finish. But as I was saying, we saw not only Jim Richards' son Stephen have a good result earlier in the day under very difficult conditions in the wet in Formula Ford, but we saw some very exciting, very fast racing in Thundersports. So let's have a look now at the highlights of that Thundersports race, reduced to 6 laps. 20 survivors of an aborted start in the Thundersports race doing a green flag lap now to check on what have been treacherous track conditions here at Sandown. This was their attempted first start. Spiritus there, hit up the tail by Mundy in 61, the black car. Spiritus goes across the track, does the right thing though, because he takes Mundy out and slogged him in the tail. And it all happened for this reason, that coming out this Falcon has blown its engine, it's dropped oil further back and then absolutely vented the sump. And so when they hit that oil, everything went crazy. 20 survivors, there were nearly 30 on the grid a little while ago, was to be an 8-lap race. It's now 6 laps, 19.2 kilometres around Sandown. On to pole position, Brian Smith in 5. Joining him, Des Wall on the front row of the grid, 26, the big Supra. Number 1, Kerry Bailey, second row of the grid. Number 3, Bob Jolly, third row. 27's on the 4th row, Danny Osborne.
And traction's the big problem for them. The tyres are cold, the circuit's not good, slippery, a little bit of rain here today, as we've all seen, and it's going to be really off the line.
Beside Osborne in 27's Doherty in the pink Commodore number 19. Further back, Lee Nichols in 12. And the row behind him, 20 and 36 together, is Bill Emeny and Barry Bray in 36. Then Jeff Barnes alone on 6. And in 76, Hugh Harrison, already green and go. And it's Brian Smith from pole position. Lurching forward is Bob Jolly in 3, doing a good job. He then gets a bit slow as he hits 2nd and 3rd gear. But it's Brian Smith they're chasing, followed by Des Wall. And from further back in 19 was Robin Doherty. So the West Australian, who's been quick all weekend, lets Wall down inside him as he takes a classic line on a track that's not completely dry yet. And now they get onto the back straight where Howard Marsden, these lightweight cars with the engines put in the most ideal position in the car, really do fire as if out of a gun.
And the throttle control that's so important to these people is really showing up, because this car, the Alpha's got the engine in the front, the gearbox at the back, lots of traction, very good balance in the car, but he's really looking in his first lap that he doesn't make any mistakes. He'll attack after this first lap, I believe.
Brian Smith's car's a fairly well balanced one, and he uses it fairly well. It's not as avant-garde as some of them, not as powerful as some of them, but he makes very good use of it. But running away, as you can see, is the Supra, and that's 26 is Des Wall. Kerry Bailey's back in 3rd place in 1.
And Bob Jolly, as usual, doing a good job in number 3 in the Commodore, a more traditional touring car and not quite as well balanced, but a car that under these conditions might be a more drivable vehicle.
Des Wall, though, the man with the enormous poke at the moment. 4th place there is Bob Jolly. And launching themselves up the back straight for the 2nd of 6 times goes Brian Smith, 2nd in the race, leader of that pack. And Bailey in 1 in 3rd place. Des Wall, though, the man in command. Busy there in car 1 is Kerry Bailey. Des Wall doing it very precisely, as you must do in a car with this much poke. You can afford to be conservative in corners and then really rip into it when you've got it straight. He doesn't need to do anything radical at this stage. Completes 2 laps, and his margin over Smith is 1.78, 1.27 back to third placed Kerry Bailey, and indeed a similar distance back to fourth. So the man who was fastest in qualifying, not doing it at the moment, 1.8 seconds very nearly behind the race leader Wall.
Sandown is a rough circuit, and it hurts these lighter bodied cars with big power more than it does the more traditional touring cars. And you can see they're having to be very careful through the corners. And Will, you're right, it's into the corner gently in acceleration. A little bit of rain showing up on our cameras there. That won't be helping either the heart rate or the power down on the road.
Des Wall really making sure he uses every bit of track he can find. And then when he gets into a straight line, he just lets it go, fires it.
Lapping already.
Come to think of it, these look a bit like our touring cars with their big wings. Touring cars these days, this coming up to half distance, completing 3 in what's been shortened to a 6-lap race. And ground made by Brian Smith. The gap now 0.7 of a second. He's made a second on the lap. And this is typical Brian Smith stuff. He has a well-balanced car. He drives it very well. He's a guy well in his 40s, and he doesn't spend an awful lot of money on his motor racing. This is, in fact, very similar looking to his old Alfa sports sedan, but it is a new car, so it has had a rebuild or re-specification in the last couple of years. Ran in a series at Eastern Creek a couple of years ago and did very well there. Des Wall's bonnet looks to be sitting a bit high and suspect in terms of its latching.
See the car's bumping and weaving. There's no difference in them in power to weight. Straight line's about the same, so it's really coming off those corners. That's going to make all the difference. Yeah, the go with these is to put the engine back somewhere adjacent to the driver. It's usually about a 5-litre minimum Chevy engine, fuel injection, so they've got 500 odd horsepower, often with a Hewland gearbox. And it's very much really almost a sort of a space frame construction. Fairly close to ideal weight distribution, and then they go motor racing, and very exciting motor racing too. The gap's gone back out to 1.7 seconds, and in third place 2.7, and 2 laps remain. Still in fourth place is car 3, Bob Jolly. Second place Smith, third place Bailey. The 2 leaders are getting away from Bailey. He's not able to make any impression, nor is anybody able to attack him. So the race is between first and second. Wall heading towards 260 kilometres an hour up the back straight. The thing absolutely flying. You can see it just wanting to walk around a little bit. He drives it very well. Gee, nicely modulated brake pedal there as he brings the speed down. Third gear back to second here. Smith's opportunity now. Oh dear, Mirror. Oh, that's crazy. That is crazy. The driver of car 70 really had no idea people were there. Keith Linnell in that Datsun. The experience of the drivers ahead kept everybody out of trouble there. Yeah, that's right. It was good driving by the guys leading the race. But that was silly. I mean, it was very conservative by Des Wall, and you can see the result now. That with 1 lap remaining as they come across the start-finishing line, Brian Smith is leading from Des Wall by 1.12 seconds. And so the last 3 kilometres around Sandown to sort out that, if Des Wall can do it. Smith fairly determined that he won't. It'll be interesting up the back straight, and it'll be real heart-in-the-mouth stuff when they come over the top, when they're trying to haul them back from 260 k's with lap traffic. Smith keen to hang on,
And if he gets down to Dandenong Road first, as he will, gee, he gives the brakes a hard work out there, or the car a hard work out under brakes, pushing it hard down through there, Howard Marsden.
Yes, and they're going to catch the back marker right across the last corner into the final straight.
So Smith taking good advantage of a situation really which was a bit untoward. Could be another one for him this time instead of for Deswall. Could be a drag race to the finishing line. It will be. Deswall lines up. He gets on the inside. He's trying to fire the big car now, and the Supra just won't pick it up quick enough. And so I think Brian Smith can hang on as he races to the finishing line. It's a fairly long way to it, but he does it with a gap of a quarter of a second. Brian Smith from Western Australia in the Alfa Romeo, dimly related to Alfa Romeo in shape and badge only. But car 5 victorious over Deswall in the Toyota Supra, equally little relationship to a Toyota Supra, but well driven into second place, and into third place Kerry Bailey in another Supra number 1.
And well driven, those two men. They looked after themselves, kept themselves out of trouble. Great race.
And that's it. The 6 laps Thunder Sports Cup here at Sandown. 19.2 kilometres Brian Smith from Deswall and Kerry Bailey in Supras.
Yes, so that's some of the Thunder Sports action from earlier in the day, and once again the Sandown 500 being a very dramatic race, as it always seems to be, this year with a touch of history. The Brabham family, perhaps the most famous name in Australian motorsport, pulling off a victory. Jeff Brabham coming back from 10 years out of the country really in the United States to pull off really a famous victory. Remember, we'll be back on SBS with more motorsport on 21st of November at Eastern Creek, the NASCARs and Ozcars for Thunder at the Creek. Don't miss that, live from 2 p.m. Sunday 21 November. From all of us here at Sandown, thanks for joining us. Good afternoon.